Dr. Will Clower is a trained neuroscientist, and he's here this morning to give his thoughts on the brain recovery of Congresswoman Giffords and the mental state of Loughner as well. Dr. Clower, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about what happened. So many people shocked that Congresswoman Giffords may actually recover. How is that even possible when a bullet hits the brain?
I know, it goes right through her brain. And the thing about the brain is that it's very plastic in a lot of ways. In other words, there's a lot of redundancy in the system so that depending on the insult, the injury, there can be some accommodation in the brain. And again, it all depends on the particular trajectory of that insult that went through her brain.
Okay.
In her case, it went through on the left side from the back to the front. Importantly, like you can see in this graphic, if it goes through on only one side, the probability of recovery is dramatically greater than if it goes across hemispheres.
Wow.
And when it goes through, in this particular case, it went through and missed the primary visual, primary motor areas. And what we see from that is that she's able to move her arms and legs. She's also able to move her eyes. And she's able to respond to commands on her own, which means that the frontal section, the executive section, is still intact.
Wow.
The last thing, and this happened Saturday, they removed the breathing tube. And once the breathing tube is out, after a while, they'll be able to test whether language is impaired.
I see.
The trajectory of the insult came through on one side, and the language area is in that region. Not just the ability to speak, the motor end of things, but the ability to understand. And so we'll be able to find out more about that at the very end, but it's just a gift and a miracle.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that she's been able to come so far.
Can she relearn things if it's not, back to normal?
There's a probability that she can, but there's so much that's unknown about the brain that it's person by person. We won't know until they actually try. But that she's able to move is a gift and a miracle.
Well, let's talk about the mind of Jared Loughner, the man who allegedly shot her. What does it take for someone's brain to do such a horrific act?
I know. The causes of this are staggered and overlapping. There are genetic tendencies toward disordered thinking, like paranoid thoughts or thoughts that people are out to get you, for example. That's manifest in neurochemical ways in your brain. And then the final part of that is the thinking that leads to that behavior. Something I want to point out is that even if you have a tendency toward bipolar or these types of thoughts, that it's not necessarily true that you'll end up like this person where you're pathological. In a lot of cases, when people catch this behavior early, they can apply behavioral therapy or psychological therapy or even chemical therapy, drug therapy, and bring people out of that way of thinking. The key is to catch it early. I mean, what we saw at the very beginning was that he had become isolated from his friends, isolated from his family, and when he's alone, there's no anchor in the real world to bring him back. And those thoughts, they spiral. They self-reinforce until that's all there is for him.
Is someone who does something that just, I don't know, I'm using the word
Heinous,
crazy or heinous, is it mental illness definitively or not necessarily?
I talked to a psychiatrist at Harvard this weekend about just that question, and his answer was that it's not known until you talk to them, because people throw around the word schizophrenia. It's an easy word to throw around, but there's about 12 different subtypes of it that can include paranoia or not, can include violence or not, and so they don't know exactly what it is, what the fingerprint is, until they get them. All they know is that now there's a violent component to it.
Well, how does someone like that, how can you prevent someone who may have a tendency from not, doing something like this?
Is, again, to grab them early and get them into treatment. And, it's tough because if you don't have a good relationship with your family, I've read so many stories of people who said, I was Jared Loughner. I was thinking this way. I was isolated, and my family came and got me. They got me treatment, and now I'm X, Y, and Z. I'm a teacher. I'm whatever. But once you're isolated and alone, and there's no anchor to reality anymore, then you can't get out of that groove of thinking that you've worn for yourself.
Yeah, well, and we were even talking about this morning, our first guest, Rob Wilson, talking
Yeah.
about mentoring. Maybe people don't have parents, mentors can even help in that sense, be someone they can connect with.
Huge, absolutely important. And that person, the Big Brother, Big Sister programs are so important. One of the things that's coming out of this is in Arizona, they're saying, look, this guy fell through the cracks because there's no support. And you can't count on the family to be that support. And so if we had some structure in place that can grab just a few of these, then the probability of this type of tragedy just drops.
Well, very interesting. Thank you for your perspective,
Absolutely.
Dr. Will.
Thank you.
And again, Dr. Will Clower of Mediterranean Wellness here every other Monday to talk about living healthy and sharing his expertise in neuroscience with us today. Thank you for your insight.